And this takes us back to like ancient Greeks and number one, matter. So matter is the potentiality of a thing. It is that of which something is made and the substratum that can receive form. So for example, bronze is the matter of a statue. Flesh and bone are the matter of a living being. So matter by itself is indeterminate. It doesn't yet have the actuality of the thing until form gives it structure. Does that make sense? So the raw material is the matter, but the output is the form. And so to talk through form, so form is the actuality of a thing. It is the principle that makes a thing what it is rather than something else. So, for example, the shape or design of a statue, the soul as the form of a living body. So Aristotle, form is not a separate realm, but is immanent in things. Does that make sense? And so there's something called hylomorphism. So hyl is matter and morph is form. And so this is the unity of matter and form. Every natural substance is a composite of matter and form, i.e. potential and actual. Neither exists independently in the natural world. So pure matter is never found without form, and pure form exists only in immaterial things. Pretty crazy, right? To think that, humans have been thinking about this stuff for so long. So to give another example, a wooden bed, the matter is the wood structured by the form, which is the bed arrangement. As we carry on through this, like Aristotle's categories, and this is where like the modern business comes in. It's like the matter is the underlying substrate, the stuff that can take on form. And in modern business, that's the commodities, the raw materials, the hardware, the energy, the land, the logistics capacity, so the competencies, so anything physical, finite, and slow changing. And then the form, the structuring principle that makes the matter what it is. In modern terms, that's then the software, the data, the AI, the design, the brand, the user experience, the pattern that extracts value from matter. So to re-highlight that, so the matter is anything physical, finite, and slow changing, and the form is the pattern that extracts value from matter. Interesting. So this is very much like form and matter, the business principles I'm talking about today of software versus hardware. And in particular, this idea of form, i.e. the software layer. So what if our access to complex form is now so cheap and so fast that any individual can do it on an iPhone from wherever their business problem is? And how is that defensible if you're just investing in form? I don't know. It's a great discussion, this, and that's why I wanted to make this podcast. And so the tension in modern economics on the matter side of things, aka commodities, it anchors you in real assets with scarcity and intrinsic durability. Costs are not collapsing. If anything, they're rising with scarcity or logistics shocks. So an example being, the energy industry, metals, real estate, right? And on the form side of things, aka information processing software, the costs collapse rapidly. That's Moore's law, that's AI models, that's cloud scale. The marginal cost of applying new form to old matter is approaching zero. So using AI to design or optimize your physical production process of raw materials, right? This is really interesting stuff, isn't it? It's like, okay, so the point is, it's like, how are you ever going to get return of capital when you're only investing in form? You still need the underlying matter in order to drive equity value long term. So form is cheap and accelerating. Matter is finite and anchoring. So Aristotle's hylomorphism is alive in business today. Both are necessary, but they behave differently under time and market pressures. Interesting. Okay, well, this is just the kind of stuff that I like to learn about. Like, incidentally, I'm pretty certain that this investigation into Aristotle's way of thinking is using AI. So we can build on the shoulder of giants, right? The previous thinkers of multiple, like whatever that is, like 2,000 years ago. We're now reapplying that to business today. That makes us, in some ways, the most sophisticated business operators the world's ever known. So how are we not driving more value? How do we not have better businesses? How do we not see more abundance all around us? And my number one answer to that is money printing. And that's where it's so important to dig back into the history books and see what happened in the past and how people reacted. So let's apply this concept to a business model. It's like, okay, so going back to my friend that I originally touched on that we had this conversation with, it's like secure the long-term control of physical assets that others cannot replace digitally or cannot replicate. So examples: forests, land, logistic fleets. So my old area of expertise, shipping, manufacturing. These assets you want to hold or grow in value because they're scarce, slow moving, and immune to the collapse of digital costs. So, that is the primary means of production, basically. Like, how do we get our hands on that as equity investors to then build on top of that better form? So stay exposed to form. Form that we mentioned before of like the drop in cost of building software is reducing so fast, it's collapsing, okay? And place those on top of these physical processes. So, there are a bunch of examples that we can probably think of where this could be true. I already mentioned the laundrette, right? And having a more automated process through that. Am I confident that a laundrette is enough of a basic necessity that it would be inflation proof? Well, that I'd need to think about some more. My hunch is yes. People still need to wash their clothes, right? But who knows what could happen, if the energy prices go sky high. And I'll touch on an example in a minute that really gets you thinking. The point is the cost of form keeps falling. So your competitive edge increases as the tech costs collapse. And this is what I touched on before, where basically you're competing against other business owners in traditional physical businesses that haven't adopted any software in the way that you're envisaging. If you anchor too heavily in matter, you risk becoming a commodity business where price competition erodes margins. If you anchor only in form, you float in a space where entry barriers collapse and competitors scale infinitely at lower cost. The hybrid is obviously the base case of those two combined. So matter is the scarce base, form is the multiplying layer. I mean, isn't this cool, right? This is the kind of stuff that really gets me pumping. It's like, for so long I've overlooked physical businesses as just not the way to go because of the lack of ability to scale. And therefore software is just a much better bet. But what if I'm wrong now that software is now that AI is eating software? So the hybrid is matter is the scarce base, form is the multiplying layer, as I just touched on. Your business owns finite substrates and you continuously apply ever cheaper forms, i.e. you're constantly upgrading the software, the AI, and the data approaches to how you're running those companies or to how you're providing those services. And so the result being is the assets you control are worth more in your hands than in anyone else's. And that, I think, is the key insight for like, how do we beat the Bitcoin hurdle rate? Well, one, are we measuring things correctly? And two, what if there is a humanistic capital here that's being completely overlooked given the capability of building something like what I'm just discussing? Thank you.